Reuters, and did all the interesting stuff, just covering the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both for being here on Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari. I'm going to dive right in. This idea really came from our owner and Sarah Lomax Reese at WURD Radio. And so I really want to kind of read some of her thoughts into the record and then just have you all respond. So I'm going to read kind of directly from the ideas that she wanted us to discuss. And then I'm going to add a little bit of my own flavor to it and just open up the space for you all to weigh in. So let's start with, in this segment, really focusing on who are we, and we is in quotations. Where are we and how do we get here? Because I think that depending on how you see things and where you're positioned, impacts a lot of your understanding or your assessment about what is actually going on. So I want to read from Sarah. The assault on the U.S. Capitol was breathlessly covered as stunning and shocking. But was it really? We proposed to have a conversation and delve into the hypocrisy, her word, of this moment. There were warning signs, at least there should have been, for 4 years and actually even 400 years. Selfies with the mob, history, all of that stuff. What's the difference between how, Black Lives Matters protests and the Capitol protests and riots were happening in terms of preparedness, coverage? For me, it brings back a lot of memories about how different populations were covered in the event of Hurricane Katrina, where some people, were considered looters, whereas other people found food because they were hungry. So I want to talk about, this idea of identity and position and how it impacts how we frame what we see as happening, particularly from the lens of the Capitol assault last week. So who are we? Who is this we that everybody's talking about? Where are we right now? And how did we get here? I want to start with you, Yinka, your thoughts on that.
I love that we question, particularly for the media. That's a really big issue, and many of us who have this multiple backgrounds or people of color in media struggle with this every day. Particularly in mainstream media, I should be clear. I often like to say the white is silent. Right? There's an assumption that everyone, when we say we, is white. And we have these discussions and we never really sort of take into account the fact that this country is not just made up of white people. And that kind of creates, and it's important in the context of media because it creates a kind of natural bias, even if the person writing or producing the segment or whatever isn't supposedly thinking in those ways that we have stereotyped people who have racist attitudes or racist thoughts, but they actually still enable those kind of attitudes and they enable the stereotypes to live on, especially the negative stereotypes to live on, because the we is not as inclusive as the word implies. So so that's my take on it in terms of just we in a media sense.
Mitra, your thoughts on that? Who is this we and how did we get here?
Well, I think how you open saying people just looked at this and said, this is shocking, this is stunning. There was one part of me that was like, now you're shocked, now you're stunned, because it wasn't enough to be stunned by S-hole countries or family separations we've gone through a lot of shocks to the system over the last few years. So I think there's something about the physical attack on a US institution, right? The building itself and what that stands for clearly struck, to kind of take Yinka's point here, the we is institutions that were for white people to begin with, right? And so the physical building, the Constitution itself, the separation of powers, so much of what this country has been built on, the we the people was defined from the very beginning as not us, right? Not us who are joining you, Brother Shamari, today. Mm-hmm. I think there's another way to look at this, which is if you think about that day on January 6th, most of us woke up that morning to the news that Black voters had propelled the Senate to majority Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. that the special election in Georgia on the backs of Black voters had done something quite historic in a southern state. And so you saw one assertion of power, and then a few hours later, you saw another assertion of power. If you dig a little deeper, the symbols of that, I think, one in the morning was Stacey Abrams, you know, backed up by a lot of people. But Stacey Abrams, remember, lost her election. What did she do with that loss? I think she did what our people historically in this country have done, which is, you know, you lick your wounds and you move forward, right? You figure out your path because you know that that we might not include you, so you've got to figure it out, right? What we saw later in the day was another loss, right? The president lost the election in November. And I think there's a question of whether they're forging a path forward or clinging to a path that's not just from 4 years ago, but if you saw the flags that were in the Capitol, it's from, you know, you opened us up with from hundreds of years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested when we come back to explore from this angle and welcome McColby into the conversation. For me, as a person who's been here all my life, and you know, my ancestry, you know, traces back to enslavement here, we have a term for what I think we saw, and you know, which is, if you listen to the Reverend earlier, this idea of our surprise. It's called white backlash. Like every time Black people make a step that anybody sees as progress, it has historically been accompanied by these egregious showings of white backlash. And so I'm a little surprised about the surprise, and I'm wondering what makes this moment of the white backlash so different feeling for everybody. Like, why is this particular thing receiving this level of coverage or perspective taking about it? And I'm wondering, is it the setting? Is it because it happened at the Capitol? Is it the numbers of people? Is it that we were in a state of disbelief before this curtain was pulled back? I'm wondering what makes this feel so big for us right now. So I want to explore that. You know, Sarah phrased it in a question of, Alexa, was this a coup? Like, what really was this thing, and why is this iteration of the white backlash being fixated upon, both at a local level, but also from a global perspective? And what is the messaging that people are telling themselves? What's the story that people are saying from the different constituencies that you all represent about what happened in America on that day? That's what I want to explore. We're talking with Mitra Yinka, and we'll be joined by McColby. Hey, we got Haiti in the house. We got Africa in the house. We got India in the house. It's going to be a full house, y'all. If you want to join our conversation, hit us up. We might be able to squeeze you in at some point. 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. We're getting diasporic with it, y'all, right here on Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari. We'll return right after these messages.
The moments, the movements, the culture, then and now. WHYY shines a light on our past and our progress like no one else. Monday night at 9, the stories of Lena Horne, Abby Lincoln, Diane Carroll, Nina Simone, Cicely Tyson, and Pam Grier. Black female entertainers who transformed American culture forever. Produced by Alicia Keys. How it feels to be free. Monday night at 9 on WHYY TV 12.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his own words. Brought to you by Pico, Keystone Plus, Premium Nutrition Meals, and JD's Auto Body and Painting. The immortal words of Dr. King.
What I'm saying to you this morning, my friend, even if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, go on out and sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Handel and Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. If you can't be a pine on the top of a hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub on the side of the reel. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. And when you do this, you've mastered the length of life.
Brought to you by Pico, powering communities, Keystone Plus, premium nutrition meals, and JD's Auto Body and Painting for all your auto body and detailing needs. Groundings with Brother Shamari right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
Gotta make this quick. Gotta make it stick. So much say, so little time. Taking it slow. Only got about a minute. Apropos. Not too many seconds in it. Have to do. Let us know it ain't no time. Says she chat mess. So much to say, so little time. You can be a tenny as a dollar people redeemed. You gotta give some try. The world's not as empty, but it is redemptive. A formula for ritualize. So much to say, so little time. Time is the inevitable elevation. The individuality is taken from infinity. And we have not much time.
We have not much time. We have so much to say, so much to delve into, and hopefully we'll create some time down the line to have some longer form dialogues about this most important conversation. But I'm going to jump right back in. We have McCovey joining us, and I think I said it wrong again, so I'm going to let her correct me this time. I had it right the first time, and now I got a whole thing in my head, but I'm going to get it right. I want you to join us from Haiti Times, and then follow up, introduce yourself, and then follow up on the dialogue that really has to be about what happened on January 6th. Was it a coup? Was it just a continuation of the white backlash that we continually suffered over our 400-year sojourn here as Black people, as people of color? And how is this being looked at and narrated outside of the U.S. from the constituencies that you each represent? So let's start with you, Maccabee.
Sure. So thank you so much, Brother Shamari, for having me. This is really, I think, a good moment to talk through all of the thoughts that I've seen expressed in my community, in the Haitian American community. And I'm here representing the Haitian Times, which is a 20-year-old publication, originally based out of Brooklyn, but now digital. That's really, it was created to give voice to like our perspectives, right? Our views and how we're assimilating and just seeing how, as an immigrant group, we're really becoming American, right? While taking care of back home, obviously. So I think from that context, when we watched what happened last Wednesday, the storming of the Capitol, it was a little bit surreal because coming from Haiti, the reason a lot of our parents and some of us left Haiti was because we had to deal with that type of unrest, political unrest, the violence that comes with it, and just trying to be able to have a life, right? So now here we are after going through the struggles of the Duvalier years. I'm sure you've heard about dealing with Tonton Macoute and all of that. Here we are in the US where there's supposed to be, a semblance of stability. That's a huge selling point, of security and safety. We're turning on the news and social media. The feeds are all about how there are these rioters storming the Capitol. So, it just took me aback personally. It took the staff at the Haitian Times aback in many ways. And the publisher of the publication, Gary Pierre, like he and I were chatting, like, are you watching this? Like, no, yeah, I'm watching this. Are you? And so he says to me, I've seen this before in Haiti and in Africa, which, you know, he's from Haiti and he also covered African countries for the New York Times back in the 80s and 90s. So it was just like seeing that experience that you usually associate with other countries happening in the US was kind of just like it gave whiplash to a lot of us. And so on social media, there was just a lot of talk around, is this a coup? I think some of our Haitian brothers and sisters were asking, like, oh my God, there's a coup going on. Because we know what it looks like and what it feels like, having been through it in Haiti. So, you know, because that's what we do, our publication quickly put together a story just telling that narrative, saying, here's how Haitian Americans are feeling, and reacting on social media to what's happening in Washington, D.C., the seat of power of the United States of America. It was just incredibly surreal. So I think calling it, you know, mob, you know, an insurrection, like this isn't who we are, like where is everybody? It was just kind of one of those things that was like, yeah, we could kind of see this coming because we've seen this for the past 4 or 5 years overtly in New York City, where I'm based. We've seen the heightened, you know, racial tensions. I've had brothers and sisters, like my own siblings, who've had things thrown at them or called out of their names, the N-word and all of that, right after the 2016 election, right? Things that we hadn't seen before or that we'd associated with the Deep South. So we kind of knew this was coming. And then fast forward to last summer with George Floyd and everything happening, the way that we saw police react to the protest was, again, one of those, like, whose side is which, like who's protecting us or who's not. I remember my mother saying one night the police were chasing protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters, through the neighborhood, right? To catch them for being outside, like after curfew and all of that. And so she looked out her window and she just saw people clothed in black with guns drawn, almost like chasing protesters like through these yards to arrest them for God knows what, for being out, you know, protesting for their rights. Right. So she said to me, you know, like, where am I? Am I back in Haiti, where you have officials of the state chasing people, you know, who aren't armed, chasing them with guns drawn because they're trying to make a point? So coming back full circle to this, it wasn't a surprise. It was more like a culmination of all these different incidences that have been happening over the past 4 years, definitely, right. And then to a lesser extent, all our lives in this country.
So I'm wondering, to build on your point, now I want to hear from Mitra and Yinka on this. You know, I went to Jamaica in '97. Which was around, you know, Clinton was president, GATT, NAFTA, all that kind of stuff is in the air. And I was surprised when we rode through the streets of Kingston to see military people guarding a lot of the industrial facilities where people were working, like soldiers on the ground in the city. Like, it was like, wow. I feel like in many ways, a lot of what has happened in the world under the paradigm of neoliberalism that you might see in other countries, like, you know, Civil War, Sierra Leone, Liberia. I have a lot of friends from those places who were saying this feels eerily familiar to what was going on in my country and the reason I left my country to come here to America and kind of see this thing. Is that real? Is that paranoia? What are some of the things that we as people here in America might not know about how this presence, this military presence, this policing presence has manifested in other parts of the globe? And maybe we're now seeing it one of the first times domestically, but I contend that people who've been in other places kind of know this playbook. This playbook looks and feels a lot more familiar to you all. Talk a little bit about that. Mitra?
Sure. So my family's from a region called Assam. It's in the northeast of India, and it's been a militant state for decades. And so as a child, we would have paramilitary forces in the streets, and they were outsiders, right? They were there to patrol our state. And it was a bizarre existence. And it's not dissimilar today, where we would be kids playing in the yard. The forces would be marched out in front of that. Like they would definitely exert, you know, they would do marches, they would chant, and we would make fun of them. They would look at us and they would kind of smile and move on. And so this feeling of coexistence, but not really knowing what to make of the other, was bizarre to me as a child, because I would say, well, they're on the other side. How can we be making fun of them when they have guns? And a funny thing happens when you get into this for a few years, where as family, you have one, I always say, to be Assamese, you have one side of your family that's militant, and you have another side of your family who've been killed by the militants, right? And certainly that is the case in my family. So this notion of two-sidesism, which I think the US is really going through, confronting the polarity of what you're describing, eventually settles into a realization that it's not that easy, right? And that's just, you know, kind of one recollection I have from those years, because even when we eventually hit peace, and I use quotations around that, the transition of which side were you on, into like the present day, it doesn't really leave you, right? And so even the region today, while operating under like a better Indian economy and definitely more attached to the rest of the country, there still is this unease of whose side are you on? And so I share that because I used to think, again, as a kid, your only worldview is kind of small. And then for the last 20 years, I've been a journalist and have traveled, you know, to Israel, and actually with Yinka to Nigeria, and I've been to other places where you start to see the universality of just how complicated it is, and yet we have this desire in politics and the media to kind of keep shorthanding it as,
right,
you know, you're on this side or you're on this side, and that's it, right? It's very simplistic.
I want to challenge the shorthandedness. That's my thing. I think people are doing workarounds and shorthanded analysis. So, yeah, I want to come to you. There's a journalist. I don't know if you all, I'm assuming you all might be familiar with him, Christopher Hedges, who's written a lot of, and he's done it before COVID, before this moment, probably 2, 3, 5 years in, has really been doing these lectures around, look, America, pay attention, because I've been in the Ukraine, I've been in war zones, I've been in failed states, and what's happening here looks a lot like what was happening there 10, 15 years ago. What should we have been paying attention to, Yinka? And is that analysis, does it bear fruit from your perspective? Are there warning signs about maybe the end of an empire, America becoming no longer a hegemonic state, but maybe a failed state? Are those inklings really in the air, or is that hyperbole?
No, no, there's definitely in the air, and we've all. I mean, this is why we're having this conversation about why we're calling this a surprise or a shock, right? Because we could see the conversations happening. I remember, one of the most vivid days for me was November 9th, 2016, and dropping my young child off at a daycare center here on Long Island. And this is a daycare center where all nationalities, all ethnic groups, everyone's in there, because that's the kind of majority of the young children there. But the guy that owns the place is like this older white man, and as I walk in, I can hear him talking on the phone about saying, yes, now we'll finally get some things done. Things will be better now. I'm like, huh. And at this point, if you remember that day, this is right after Trump's been confirmed, and we're all kind of walking in shock. And you come in and someone's, oh wait, this guy who I leave my kid with, who I actually think is a really nice man, right? Who have always just kind of had this general assumption. Obviously, I wouldn't leave my child there if I thought otherwise. But and it kind of, that was my first shock, right? That was the first sign. That was kind of like, something's happening here. How did this many, okay, so there's all confusion about how the election and the electoral college, all that stuff, but there are enough people voted for this person? And then you start to see the conversations happening, right? Mm-hmm. Then you start to realize, oh, this is really what this country is about. And then you start to see how we get to the point where we're having conversations about the nature of government and elections, and we're worried about elections. Like, this is America. Why are you worried about elections? You know, these are the same. When I cover African elections, there's a whole kind of standard playbook as to how they go. No matter how well the country is run, the playbook is the same. They have the election. Whoever's in power gets into lead. Whoever's against, regardless of the result, says, I want it. And then you say no. And then the US says, let's get on. Let's get carry on. There's this kind of, it goes in every country, doesn't matter where you go. And like suddenly we're reversed. It feels like other countries have got to call into America and say, well, you should move on now. It looks like Joe Biden won. How did this happen?
So I wanted to put a pause right here because we come up on the commercial break. When we come back, but I do want to pick up. I want to pick up from here with a particular question. But for the record, now I want to welcome you all to what Public Enemy termed in 1989 one of my favorite songs and lines. Welcome to the Terror Dome. You know, because a lot of people are surprised. You know, there's this mythology out there about what this place is. So I want to officially welcome everybody, not just you all, everybody at the sound of our voice who's surprised about what's happening. Public Enemy told you. Welcome to the Terror Dome. And in the Terror Dome, they gave you instructions. Move as a team, never move alone. Welcome to the Terror Dome. So when we come back, I want to talk about what we can expect now as new normals, given the context of what we're in and what you saw. Like, you know, let's engage in some conjecture and forecasting about, based on your knowledge about what this looks like in other places, instruct us as people who are quote unquote surprised about some things we might need to look forward to or to be preventive about, given this emerging new normal around race, racism, failed states. I don't know what this is, whatever name you want to put on it, and then give us some warning signs about things we need to pay attention to and potentially kind of forecast so that we can be more protective and preventive in our walk, particularly as Black and brown people in the Terror Dome we now call America. Eric Keith Grimes, Brother Shamarby. This is Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamarby. We will talk with you after these messages.
Happy New Year, Philly. It's Solomon Jones. The pandemic of 2020 blew the roof off of life as we know it and forced us to make radical decisions once thought impossible. Many parents and grandparents turned to the option of a public cyber education. In thousands of instances, they sought assistance from the one true pioneer and industry leader in public cyber education, Commonwealth Charter Academy. Visit ccaeducate.me and exercise your right to choose a safe, hassle-free, student-focused learning environment your kids deserve. CCA delivers elite online instruction streamed directly to the safety and comfort of your living room. They provide a laptop and headset along with internet connectivity that includes financial assistance, all at no cost to families. CCA has been the gold standard in school choice for nearly 20 years. Visit ccaeducate.me and ring in 2021 with a 5-star learning experience. Again, that's ccaeducate.me.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach with tips to help you stay well. We breathe every day and have been doing so since before we were born. But wait, let's think about this for a moment. Something as simple as breathing can enhance our health and well-being. When we breathe mindfully, we slow down, take deep breaths, and activate our parasympathetic system to relax our bodies. Mindful breathing goes like this. Number 1, find a comfortable place to sit still for a few minutes. Number 2, close your eyes and relax your hands on your thighs. Number 3, take a deep breath in and count to 3. Then exhale your breath and count to 3. Do this 5 times. We sometimes think mindful breathing has to be an intense experience, yet even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM.
And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media.
Groundings
With Brother Shamari.
right now on WURD Radio.
And wordradio.com.
Gotta make it stick. Gotta begin, so listen up. Won't you give an ear to hear my head communicate? Say so little time. If I explain how my song, taking it slow. Got about a minute, ain't no rebuttal. Not too many seconds in it, and not to spare. The consequence I'm not aware of. Make this catch your hand and start wrecking jazz. Happens, there's no time for such chit chat. So much to say, so little. If you could be attentive to talk, be preventive. Keep got clear for strife. The world's not as empty, butter is addictive. Before my love for richer life, so much to say, yay, so little. Time is a definitely little for duration.
And welcome back to Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari. Again, that's different forms of Take Six's song, So Much to Say, So Little Time. And that's what I feel like right here in this conversation, trying to cover the globe and get a global perspective of what's going on right here in this place we call America. Ever since, for me, the advent of television and back in the 60s with the Vietnam War, America has kind of been positioned and framed as the world's policeman. You know, they go out and do good all across the globe and they maintain the peace and the order. And yet, probably since that time, but definitely since last week, we've kind of seen that there might be a little crack in that armor of the world's policeman. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, and again, from the places you've been and seen, what's some advice, some guidance, some warnings even you would offer us as this country is evolving into its version of its new normal? Based on what we saw and experienced last week, based on what you've seen and experienced with COVID, there's a lot going on that's going to usher in new normals. But I contend that we've seen some of this playbook, as Yinka has said, and each of you have said, if we've been paying attention in other places. So paying attention in other places, what are some things we should be paying attention to as we forecast and project into the future of how things are going to roll out, particularly in American cities across the country? Let's start with you, Yinka. Let's go to Mitra, and then let's close out with Maccabee. And I'm going to ask each of you as you finalize your comments, also let people know how to reach out to you and keep in touch with your work.
Thanks for that, Brother Shamari. Yeah, I think I think about this, in terms of security, right? So I think the thing we're going to see, whether people like it or not, we are going to see more security presence. Just like you saw that image of all those soldiers on the floor of the Capitol getting ready for the inauguration. When you have what's essentially an enemy within, right? You have domestic terrorism. They're going to have to step up security if they want Americans to feel safe. There's going to have to be visible security. And sure, particularly if you live in New York City, we're kind of used to that to some extent. But I think that it had started to tamper down. But I think now we're going to see that ramp up quite a bit. If there's even any sense of fairness, maybe white people will feel some of what Black and brown people in particular have felt since 9/11, particularly brown people, just sort of this inability to get on a plane. I saw some image of someone trying to get on a plane and complaining they couldn't get on a plane. It's like, yeah, I've had that done to me. Say, oh, your name looks like somebody else's name.
Oh, yeah.
How is that even possible?
Every time I wear a quote unquote, I used to travel for work, and if I had my suit and tie, I had no problems. Anytime if I traveled and I had my quote unquote African garb on, always without fail got searched. Somehow it was coincidental, supposedly random searches, right? But somehow it always aligned to whenever I looked African.
Yeah. So this is the thing. This will be the new normal if they're doing their jobs right, if they really want to make sure that they keep people safe, and perhaps people will understand how others have felt for the last 21 years at least, and before that, frankly. So yeah, it's the presence. You've seen this in other countries, like we were saying earlier, where the military is out at even the slightest drop of a hat. Soldiers are out on the streets. We might have to see that. That might become a thing, depending on how, if there's another attack or other fears. The country will be a lot more. It's gonna be a lot more tense for some years to come.
So let me ask you, Yinka, how do people keep in touch with your writings and your work? But also, is there a place beyond that you would recommend people go if they want to get a more comprehensive view of some of these dynamics? Is there a resource, a reference point, a media platform that you say people can expand their horizons and stay in touch with? Share that with us quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. It's Yinka Writes, which is YINKA Writes, the word. And definitely come to Quartz Africa. There's qz.com/Africa. But there are a bunch of other places that also do great work. Worldpoliticsreview.com is one of them. There's several other outlets. Some of them are escaping me right now, but I always recommend just keep an open mind. There's good writing if you look for it.
All right, thank you for joining us. Mitra, your thoughts?
So I think it is important to have had the U.S. as a standard bearer, even as we discussed over the last 40 minutes or so, by whose standards was actually a really important thing for the world, right? I don't want to discount what it means. I was chuckling when Yinka was talking about kind of the African elections and the textbook that we turn to over and over again. The ability to have an arbiter to come in and enforce democracy, the ability to say, manufacturing standards on, foods or clothing or, your spaceships that are going into outer space, like the Made in America standard is, from a global perspective, a very important thing. And I think we're definitely seeing and sensing some decline in that, right? And what happens as you start to lose law and order, which I think for your listeners and your community have never been something that they could count on, right? But when you lose law and order, people become very individualistic, they become selfish, they become desperate. And I fear that mindset, especially as we're in this transition of this country from what COVID has wrought to who gets vaccines, under whose time frame. Are we spreading that standard so that we're uplifting more people versus almost enabling selfishness, right? Which I think those of us who come from other countries and have seen what happens when you can't trust law and order, can't trust your government, can't trust your institutions, that's kind of what you're left with. And then the last thing I'll say is that, it's interesting to have this conversation just as in Flint, Michigan, they're pursuing charges against the governor for his alleged being complicit in the inability to have clean water in Flint, Michigan. And so that's a 56% Black population in Flint. And so I'm just thinking about between, our institutions under assault and some of these issues that this country's been contending with long before Donald Trump ever came to power, we really can't kind of point fingers over there anymore and say that we are the standard bearer. So my hope is that the next few years are much more inward looking and confronting, how did this become the country that so screwed up the COVID response, that had a coup last week and can't provide residents with clean water for the last, I think it's been almost 10 years, right?
Welcome to the Terror Dome. I keep telling you, if you're paying attention, nobody should be surprised, but that's just me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And you can follow me on Twitter at Mitra Kalita, MITRA like Tom A. And if you're interested in subscribing to our newsletter, it's epicenter-nyc.com.
And any other thoughts beyond Epicenter? I want to take that as a given. Any other places you would recommend for people who want to research and be in a better position to forecast? What should they be keeping in touch with? I can tell that the regular stuff we're looking at and calling news is really propaganda, and we really need to be paying attention to some other outlets. What would you recommend?
I'm glad you said that. So I definitely do turn to, I mean, Yinka's Quartz Africa kind of gives me a new perspective regularly. I turn to a lot of foreign news. I'm looking in the UK because it's, you know, comes with a point of view. The Times of India called it a coup right away. So I think just looking at other countries right now and how they're covering the US. And then I'm a big advocate for switching up your Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram feed so they are diversified. I think it's really important to know what the quote unquote other side, or, you know, people who might be doing things to our children. Like, I kind of want to be listening to that before it hits too close to home. So my feeds are fairly diverse.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Maccabee.
Yeah, so I think my final thoughts are that we will be seeing more fragmentation, right? As people, the parlays of the world are being driven offline, I think more will come online, and people will look for places that feed them what they want to be fed, right? And so it's going to be a while before, like, the truth, right, really gets to where people get to a place where they can accept that their way isn't the only way, and that whatever they think they're entitled to isn't what the rest of the world believes. So I think that's a journey people who feel that way have to go through. But until they get to that point where the rest of the world wants us to be, we could be seeing more of these attempts. You know, this one failed, right? Because nothing really changed. Unfortunately, people died and got hurt, but we will see more of these, right? They might happen in pockets all over the place. So you just really have to be ready. And I think it's important to be discerning, like you were saying, in like where are you getting your information from, who's feeding it to you, as individuals and as journalists, right? That's like your due diligence. When you're asking questions, when you're writing stories, be discerning with the words that you use, the tone that you portray things in, and personally with your own family, like have these conversations, because not for nothing, there are families who are on different sides of, you know, these discussions too. But I think it's a good opportunity to have them air out these differences or help people, young children, especially young Black people who are growing up in this world. You know, I personally have monthly check-ins with my nieces and nephews to talk about issues like this, right? So I think it is important to be at the forefront of these discussions, guide our younger people, our communities to different places, and just air out grievances or figure out how we can help. In terms of like where I turn to for information, it's really funny. The Washington Post has their global opinions page, right? And I don't know if some of you might have seen it, but Karen Atia did this wonderful spoof article where she talked about how the media would have covered this had it happened anywhere except, you know, the US. And it happened really quickly. She wrote up the story as we would have happened if it was the Kurds in Turkey or Haitians or Black people somewhere else, right? And yeah, she was right. So I think within these big media conglomerates, there are voices that are pushing the envelope and pushing the mainstream to look at things differently. And it might be in specific sections like race and reckoning, right? Or wherever it may be, but they are out there. It is upon us as individuals to figure out like where makes sense for us. But yeah, The Guardian is another one that I turn to quite a bit to look at the non-US view of things and just to find a variety of news and views. So I would encourage people to look at those places, in addition, obviously, to the Haitian Times, which is HaitianTimes.com, on Twitter, Facebook, all of the platforms. And of course, you can follow me, Macollvie, MACOLLVIE on Twitter.
I appreciate you all for joining us. I want to ask a question. Do you all have, can I impose on your time for one additional segment? Because I want your thoughts about what I consider are 3 big issues, and just some quick thoughts. And I also want, if we have anybody out in our listening audience who has questions for our guests, hit us up at 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 if you want to weigh in and get our guests' thoughts about some things on your mind. So we come up on a commercial break, but here we go. These are my questions. There's 3 big ones that I just want you to tease a little bit, and hopefully we can have space where we can have a longer dialogue. The first one has to do with race and racism. And my question is, and people might get on my case about this, and I go back to Marcus Garvey. He said race first, but he didn't say race only. So my question is, what are we not saying potentially, particularly as Black people or people of color, when we look at the white mob from January 6th and we only see them as racist? We only see their protest and their anger emanating from racism. Because I contend that there's some other stuff that really got them to that Capitol that day, way beyond racism. There are some things that they are actually experiencing in this country and concerned about that also probably should concern us as Black and people of color, that we're not talking about because they've been framed as only racists, and therefore we only see race and we're missing some stuff. I'm just curious as to your thoughts about that, number one. So that's one big question. Second big question, in a time like this, one of the big conversations that is happening in, at least I can say, Black spaces, is this idea now of repatriation. This idea of maybe I need to reconsider living in Africa, living in the islands, living in Haiti, like we need to get out of this joint. So I want to hear about, from your perspective, you all had a narrative that brought you here, but now we're like, maybe we as Black people, it's time for us to exodus in the terms of Bob Marley and begin to really consider repatriation. So I'm wondering your thoughts about that from a diasporic perspective. And last but not least, one of the areas that interests me is a lot. It goes back to what Mitra was saying earlier about what people do when there's fear and insecurity and anxiety. They become individualistic and selfish. And we're living in a time now when order is going to be reestablished, order as the new normal. I'm wondering your thoughts about how concerned we should be with technology and technocracy, coupled with the military apparatus as the delivery system for this new sense of order, this new sense of safety and stability. Like, what are we not talking about as it relates to our relationship with technology and the technocracy that maybe we also need to be thinking about as a mass of people in this emerging new normal? So I know those are we ain't gonna have a lot of time to deep in, but I just want to tease some thoughts. And you all are relatively younger than me, so I'm curious as from your perspective, where these things play in your consideration and your deliberation. And again, if you're out there in our listening audience and you want to join this conversation, hit us up, 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. We're going to come to the callers first, so if there's room at the end, we'll play with those questions I asked. If not, that'll be our tease for the next conversation we can have together and follow up on this dialogue. Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari. Coming up on a commercial break. We'll talk with you after these messages.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
Livelihood. The new initiative from WURD Radio, connecting Philadelphians to jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources, and financial literacy. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey.
Work, work, work,
Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network. Groundings
with Brother Shamari.
Right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
Gotta make this quick. Gotta make this stick. So much to say, so little time. So taking it slow. You got about a minute. Not too many seconds in it. I want you spend. Ready for the question and the story. Just happen. No time for excess chitter chatness. So much to say, so little. If you can be attentive, the top of people ready. If you've got the days of time.
So much to say, so little time. So let's jump right in. I promise I will go to the callers first. I want to honor my word. And then, so let's focus on our callers' questions and comments. And then maybe as we wrap up, just your thoughts about those big three that I asked right before commercial break. So let's go to Maurice, Southwest Philly. Greetings.
Thank you, Shamari. Listen, we need to go down the dial once in a while. And also we need to turn on Fox News once in a while, just to hear what they're crying about. And what they're crying about is not rich or poor. They're crying about losing their status. One thing they do not want to do is fall behind the black man. That's why they'll die to their dying day. They'll never give us reparations because they don't want us not better than them. They don't even want us even with them. They know if I'm in an elevator and I got on a three-piece suit and they're dressed as a bum and as a white man, and somebody says their lights go out and they say their watch is missing, they're not going to look at the bum guy. They're going to look right at me. Everybody going to turn and look at the black dude in the suit because they think the black man is a thief and he's no good. And that's how they've been raised from a child, that we're always better than the black man. I've worked at Graterford Prison. I've been all over the state. And I know the white man always want to hold that status. I don't care how poor he is, what kind of drug fiend he is, he's better than the black man. And if you look at Fox News, mostly poor whites that make their status. So I'm going to leave it alone, let y'all finish, but I'm just telling you, that is the problem.
So I can summarize, Maurice, it seems like you're saying that the fight for them is to hold on to their perceived privilege over black people.
They do not want to lose that. Not money, not his status. I've seen it where a black man has got a nice house and the white guys look at it and the first thing come out their mouth, that should be my house. How he get that house?
Okay.
All right, so y'all check that out, okay?
Mitra Yinka, part of what I'm hearing Maurice say, and it's something I do all the time, is like I tune into some of the most racist sites there are, and you gotta really be built for that. Because I don't even really think we can fathom the language and the dehumanization, like what we see versus when you really go into those spaces and pay attention. You got to have a hard heart to do that. But I think that there's a benefit because you can kind of get a sense of pretense and forecasting about what's to come. Your thoughts about that and this idea that at the root of it all is the fight for the maintenance of white privilege?
Well, I similarly do tune into Fox News occasionally to see what they're saying. And I also follow groups like Blue Lives Matter and so forth, just because the way that they frame the day's news is so different. And I think, Brother Shamari, this gets a little bit to your first question of, are some of these folks actually fighting for issues that we in the Black and brown communities should care about, right? Yes, except that it comes with very different privileges and access to power. So I would say that my greatest understanding of what propels Trump's base was after his election, when, my daughter, who used to walk to the grocery store alone, there was just a lot of climate of hatred. We had a friend who was called the N-word a few blocks away. And we said, you know what, you can't ride the subway alone anymore. You got to be with somebody. And when you go to the store, you got to be with somebody. She was just about 13 years old, 12 years old, actually. And so that moment of fearing for my child's future, when every generation, my parents came here, I've had a better life than my parents, and my hope is that my daughter has a better life than me, right? Suddenly that was taken away from me. And so to what your caller is describing and to what you're describing, when Black and brown people start to ascend, there's a perception that it comes at the price. It's taking away from white people. And that realization, again, call me naive, but it wasn't until that moment where I said, well, now I know why they don't want me here, right? Now I know why they don't want me here, because who wants to live thinking your child will not have a brighter, I mean, that's the whole, biologically we're wired to want that, right? And so I think that is one of the areas you're asking us about. What's the similarity? It's that, a lot of people are feeling very let down. Areas where male mortality was declining are the areas where Trump won. And people who don't think that their children will have a brighter future, at least among white voters, also overwhelmingly went for Trump.
Okay, appreciate that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Jacob from Alney in, and then Yinka, if you want to, I'll give you a chance to respond to both questions or comments from our callers. Jacob, greetings.
Hey, peace be unto you, Brother Shamari, and to your guests. I want to ask them a question because I got a perspective like this, and I listen to everything. I ain't going to let no Proud Boys, Boogaloo Boys, or Boys scare me and get me to not inherit what my ancestors worked for in this America, right? Now, I ain't got no problem with, I'm thinking about in my retirement to even try to purchase a plot of something in Africa. But my home, where I know about, is here in America. I mean, do I have a wrong perspective for saying that I'm going to dig in and fight here for what they owe me here, right? So I don't know. Could you guys critique that for me? Maybe I'm wrong, and I'll hang up and listen.
Thoughts? Let's come to you, Yank. I think there are two things. This is idea of the fight for white privilege and their sense of losing something if other people gain. And then I hear Brother Jacob saying, hey, y'all not going to move me off my square. There's a legacy and an entitlement that we as Black people have in participating in the building of this country. And I'm not going to let no fake militia mugs scare me out of that.
But two very different things. But on the first one, very quickly, Mitra is so right. I remember very early on with the Trump years, it was framed in mainstream media as people had economic anxiety and all this stuff, as if Black and brown people don't have economic anxiety. Like, who should have economic anxiety any more than Black people in this country over 400 years? One of the most traumatizing things about watching the Capitol insurrection was actually not the physical violence. It was actually not the waving of the flags. It was the nearly 3 hours of just watching people milling around after they got out, and you were watching and thinking nothing is happening to these people. They're just being allowed to do, so I don't know. It's clearly an unfair situation the way it's laid out. But to come to the repatriation, obviously everybody has it's a personal choice. Some people some African Americans and people from the Caribbean have been welcomed back to Ghana in particular, has opened their doors, and has said anyone of African descent can come there and be welcomed, especially after the George Floyd protests. There's a huge sort of opening of doors, which is a beautiful thing to see. It's not. I'm not going to pretend we shouldn't romanticize these things as if it's easy. You could just up sticks and just move thousands of miles away if you are not already in a position to do so financially. It's not. It is not that easy, but it is certainly something that's increasingly, unlike when I was growing up in Nigeria, people are far more aware of that connection. It used to be a kind of a one-way thing, right? African Americans would come and they wear dashiki, and people would be like, they're not the same as us. But now I think people on both sides are beginning to, a younger generation, start to understand that, yes, they're of us, we're of them. It's one, and it's when it works, it's a beautiful thing. But I also agree with the gentleman's statement that if he wants to stay and fight for what is due to him, I 100% believe he should be able to do so, and should be able to do so fairly, like every other American, and not feel that people should not feel they're being driven away or given up on what is theirs any more than any immigrant who has come here and fairly worked for what they have should be driven away just because of some government policies.
So I'm going to close out a conversation on the technocracy. So what I'm going to do is now go to Mitra, because I'm curious as to this conversation of what we're calling in our community repatriation. And is there a similar or related conversation that might be happening from an Indian diaspora perspective?
A great question. So a few years ago, as India's economy was booming, the Indian government actually rolled out a passport that allowed you to live and work. And it welcomed, like a few generations down, like you had to have traced your ancestry back to India. And so my family and I actually got that. It's been a big conversation over the last few years, because I think one thing that the media do is cover Trump in a vacuum without recognizing the broader global forces that led to many authoritarian folks rising, including in India, in Narendra Modi.
Brazil.
And so the escape that many immigrants perhaps dream of, you have to ask the question of, am I escaping one authoritarian government for another, right? Is that actually really possible? Now, even having that choice, to what Yinka's saying, look, if you have the means, that's sort of what propels the ability to even have that conversation, right? That you could have such mobility, which we know, that's a privilege in and of itself. I do think that for the next few years, there's a bit more of a wait and see how this emerges. But what I would caution against is thinking that just because Joe Biden is being sworn in next week, that these factors miraculously go away, right? That's where, that's like really where I think it's going to hit kind of, where is your allegiance, and is there a possibility to even identify yourself as an American, right? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Interesting stuff. So what I'm going to do is take the last time, each of you maybe about 3 minutes apiece, to really talk into this technology thing. It sounds left field, but I really think that we are not as vigilant and diligent about the role that technology and technocracy is going to play in this new normal. Everything from the surveillance, monitoring, people are seeing it now, as they're now up to over 100 arrests from the Capitol demonstration last week, just using technology, contact tracing, all the stuff that we're getting used to in COVID is literally being used, in my opinion, in this roundup and experiment. And I have been contending for a long time that maybe if we look at some of these things as pilot experiments, we could begin to see how they're going to use technology to really police, surveil, and monitor people. Everything from COVID to crime. Your thoughts about technology and just really what we need to pay attention to as it relates to its role, coupled with the military role, the policing role in this evolving new normal state that we're in. I'm going to start with Mitra and then close out with you, Yinka.
Well, I think Yinka will have smarter thoughts on this, because he's covered technology in the past and has been a tech editor. But, I haven't heard it framed that way, Brother Shamari. So I'm actually really, I'm really curious about it, because I did see kind of the crowdsourcing of, who is this guy? Let's find his employer. There's the surveillance aspect, right, and then there's also the role of the crowd and vigilante justice, right? And to your point, be careful what you wish for here, because that might be abused.
Exactly. Yes.
Don't think that someone's not going to say, well, this is my problem with the left largely being kind of, the face of it is white, and people who will do this don't think about the implications, because they're not going to come after your kids, right? So right. I think it's a really, really smart point you raise. I don't know much about it. I think on the tech front, you're right about COVID for sure, and contact tracing, and sort of this, kind of the big brother watching everything we do. Although, I think he's been watching and listening for quite some time now. In the neighborhood I live in, we're Capitol for stop and frisk and the programs that NYPD and the FBI worked on in the post 9/11 years. We have a very large Muslim and South Asian community here. And so that, that honestly is a terrible state to live in. I can tell you that from having lived in it for years. Just like going to work every day and being searched is a whole different police state that I think you're right, from when it comes to our technology, we should be prepared for. And then the last thing I'll say is that there's just the roles of the platforms themselves, right? So just because they, you know, there was a lot of celebration over, you know, Donald Trump's Twitter account is gone. He's banned from these platforms, as though, again, there's this desire to create a boogeyman versus looking in the mirror, right? And there's a desire to say, well, we've silenced him, so now these platforms might be safe, when, you know, to the feeds that it sounds like, Brother Shamari, you and I have in common, you know that on a lot of them, it's worse than anything President Trump would say.
Oh, that was the point I was trying to, like, when you're really brave enough to go into those spaces, you better go with some serious boots, because they pull no punches about what they think. We don't have a sense of a reverse narrative about white people. Even as oppressed as we've been under in their context, that dehumanizing narrative, we don't offer back. That's a uniquely white thing that I don't think most people really get until you actually have heard it or been around it. But I'm going to take some time for you, Yinka, because I contend that one of the things we haven't learned is this evolving apparatus of surveillance that emanated in many ways from 9/11. And it's morphing now in the context of COVID and this other stuff. So talk about technology and what we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm working on a story, been working on a story for the last week about Uganda's elections. And in Uganda right now, the internet's been off for 2 days. It's been off for 2 days because the president, who has been there for 35 years, keeps winning elections every 4 years, doesn't want people sharing information to encourage this young, because he's 76 and he's got a young opposition candidate who is very popular and doesn't want them sharing information and rallying together and all that kind of thing. And you can see, what I've told my colleagues here in the US is, you know, that's going to happen here, particularly if Trump had won the second term. And it was just a matter of time before at some point someone just says in some states, you can't do it nationally in the United States, but you can definitely do it in the States or in a certain region. Just switch off the internet because you don't like what's happening, what the people are saying about you, or what people are rising up. And it's just a strange time, because to your point about surveillance, in the United States in particular, we've kind of paid, this is what we have asked for in a way, right? We're complicit in taking part in this attention economy. Like how is Facebook worth how many hundreds of billions?
Right.
I've never paid Facebook for anything, but somehow,
right,
it's because I am the product.
Right. There's a market somewhere. We just don't know what the market is.
Exactly. Like we are the ones. We're effectively the product that he's selling, right? It's not the other way around. And it's something that, you know, we have to be more aware of. Maybe we will find that we need more regulation on these platforms, because right now they're open to everybody. It seems everything seems great. And to the other point about Trump coming off Twitter, it all seems great until it's you, right? Because, you know, right now we don't like Trump. Trump's off, yay. But that means they can kick anybody off. You know, who next? So as much as we are relieved to see the back of him on that particular platform, we have to be aware that there needs to be sort of open rules that we're aware of, that we all agree on, so that it's not just anybody, the boss of Twitter or the boss of Facebook doesn't like this week.
And it's funny because I think people aren't clear that early on in the COVID dynamic, there were people who were going against the narrative, who were kicked off because they said, well, why don't you consider boosting your immune system instead of this? and boom, they were able to be taken off of Facebook, taken off of Twitter. There were people a year or two ago who were too black for Facebook and Twitter. I have friends myself, you know, that post could be considered whatever. So we gotta understand what we're acquiescing to. And I look forward to having a really fuller, richer conversation with you all around that, because I think that there's a lot of mutual learnings we can do if we consider and expand the various perspectives that we bring to the conversation. And I think we're entering a world where we have to have some big, expansive considerations in order for us to come to the right decision and the right choice about matters. Yeah. So Yinka, Mitra, thank you for joining us. I look forward to continued conversations right here on Groundings, Evolutions, and Elevations with Brother Shamari. Coming up on a commercial break. When we come back, Nathaniel Lee will join us for our Tell Me Something Good segment. Stay tuned.
Happy New Year, Philly. It's sincerely Sarita. The 2020 pandemic blew the roof off of life as we know it and forced us to make radical decisions once thought impossible. Many parents and grandparents turned to the option of a public cyber education. In thousands of instances, they sought assistance from the one true pioneer and industry leader in public cyber education, Commonwealth Charter Academy. Visit ccaeducate.me and exercise your right to choose a safe, hassle-free, student-focused learning environment your kids deserve. CCA delivers elite online instruction streamed directly to the safety and comfort of your living room. They provide a laptop and headset along with internet connectivity that includes financial assistance, all at no cost to families. CCA has been the gold standard in school choice for nearly 20 years. Visit ccaeducate.me and ring in 2021 with a 5-star learning experience. Again, that's ccaeducate.me.
Join Nick Taliaferro on Martin Luther King Day, Monday, January 18th, for a special edition of Evening Words, featuring 2 roundtable discussions with activist preachers in the mold of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. That's this Monday, January 18th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube.
WURD presents the hashtag Black Words Book Club. Tune in every second Tuesday of the month in 2021, starting on Tuesday, January 12 on Evening Words with me, Nick Taliaferro.
Groundings
with Brother Shamari.
Right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
Much to say, so little time, so let's jump right into it and keep it going. Tell Me Something Good segment with Brother Nathaniel Lee. But I look forward to future conversations with Mitra and McElvey and Brother Yinka as we talk a big view. So I think it's going to take us to see things from a bigger view. Sometimes we can get very myopic in our perspective. So I look forward to opening up that realm of consideration and contemplation right here on Groundings, Evolutions, and Elevations with Brother Shamari. So come on, Nathaniel Lee, after a deep conversation like that, this is why we do the Tell Me Something Good segment, because we can let ourselves be overcome by fear, insecurity, and anxiety. And sometimes we got to know that on the end of this, there can be and should be victory. So let's tell me something good, Brother Nathaniel Lee. Talk to us.
Well, first of all, greetings, Brother Shamari, and our WURD listeners, our WURD family out there, both on WURD Live and those listening on tertiary radio. And this is the first Tell Me Something Good segment of 2021. So let me start off by saying Happy New Year's to everyone out there. I know 2020 was a tough year. I got a little survivor's guilt because it was a great year for me. But I know that hasn't been the case for everyone, and my sympathies go out. It's been hard, but I want everybody to just take that little woosah moment, that little breath, find this little space, this little oasis to forget about all of that for a moment. And we have an interesting guest as always. And as always, let me say this before we even begin, because I don't want anybody to say, hey, I didn't catch that brother's name, I didn't catch that phone number. So take a moment right now to grab something to write with, and you got it, something to write on, something to write with and something to write on, because we have a guest you're going to want to stay in contact with. And hopefully after you listen, I hope you engage with this brother and also support, because he's doing an excellent thing. And with that, because of passage of time, I'm going to bring him right on. And let me start by proceeding at this. There's going to be an estimated 1.9 million new cases of cancer in 2021, an estimated 1.9 million cases, and of that, there's expected to be 608,570 deaths. Now, almost everyone knows someone who had cancer, who has succumbed to cancer. Some have survived cancer, and that it's a hard ordeal getting through. Anyone who faced chemo, I've had to do it with my parents. We did the ringing of the bell ceremony, like after your chemo is through, but that's a tough time. And just as COVID is sweeping the world and causing catastrophe, so are things like cancer and other maladies continue. Well, this brother here, Brother Al Harris, has made it his mission. Right in the neighborhood, made it his mission to sit with, to support those brothers and sisters, those people, even children who are going through the trauma of trying to recover and heal from cancer. And so I introduce you to Brother Al Harris of Cancer Who. Brother Al.
Hey, how you doing?
I am well. First of all, let me say this. Brother Al Harris of Cancer Who, I've had the privilege of interviewing him quite a few times over a number of years, and since that time, this brother has just simply blown up. He's everywhere. But I like to say I love the fact that he's always accessible, and throughout all of those years, he continues to do what he do, sitting by the side of those going through fighting the battle against cancer. Brother Al, just introduce yourself in your words.
Well, I'd like to thank you, and I appreciate you for bringing me on here today. My name is Al Harris. I'm the co-founder of the 501c3 nonprofit organization Cancer Who, and we help people that's going through cancer. So before COVID hit, we went to chemo sessions, we went to radiation, we went to doctor's appointments, and we were like that extended support, that extended family member to the person that was going through cancer and also their family. A few years ago, well, I want to say many years ago, I had a few family members that was going through cancer. When one of those family members passed, I just saw a gap in support. And me being a caretaker, there was no one out there that could help me and my family or help my loved one before he even passed. So I saw there was a gap in support, and me and my wife, we sat down and talked about it, and we came up and created Cancer Who.
Now, tell me more, elaborate more on some of the things that you provide, because when people think about cancer, they see the doctors, they see the nurses, they understand the concept of chemo and healing, but there's a lot of other needs that are there, and that's where you guys step in. So tell me specifically what it is you do for those who are fighting the battle against cancer.
So I like to call our support a medicine, because we come in and we provide some great emotional support. So with us going to these cancer treatments and things of that sort, and these doctor's appointments, where we're really doing this, we're helping the person that's going through cancer, because we're never going to leave the chemo. We're going to come to chemo and stay with you through the entire chemo. Or we're going to come to the doctor's appointment, we're going to sit with you in the appointment. And what we try to do is, to our best of our abilities, is break down what the doctor is saying in the lamest terms. So a lot of the times what I like to call is doctor language. That's what they speak to people. But it's a lot going on when you first hear that you got cancer. So we, with our expertise, we like to sit and hear what the doctor is saying, but more so, like I said, break it down to you in the lamest terms. And we like to give you more options than maybe the doctor or the social worker can provide you. But the opposite part of that we really are a family. So even though we are Cancer Who, we try not to thrive on cancer and really talk about cancer. Our main objective is to help take cancer off of your mind and put a smile on your face. So that's more so the medicine part. Let's have a good time. Let's have fun. And let's wrap arms around each other and connect with other people that's going through the same thing you're going through. And let's try to, forget about cancer and let's try to be that medicine in that sense, because it's very stressful having cancer. So taking that stress away, I definitely take away some of that anxiety and that depression, which also takes away pills and other medicines that you have to take for that. So like I said in the beginning, we like to call our support a medicine, because we're going to help take away some of those medicines that you will have to take and replace it with love and emotional support.
Mm-hmm. Now, Brother Harris, what I want to hear now is, what are some of the things that you have actually done? Just give me specifics about some of the things you've actually done, because you not only, you've gone to people's schools, you've transported people, and tell us a little bit of some of the specific things you've done for people with cancer to take their mind off what they're going through.
Oh, yeah. So we're very big on events. And like I said, we're just big on family. So we have transported people back and forth for chemo visits, then went to schools and did big bell ringings, birthday parties, big extravaganzas. Like I said, everything's to help take their mind off of cancer. And next month will be the second year of the Cancer Who Care Center, which is the only Black-owned cancer care center in the country. So we have the only Black-owned cancer care center in the country, and I'm proud to say that every program inside of that center is free. So we don't charge anybody for any of the programs that we have inside the center. Everything is free, and we also have a big, huge bell inside of the center. So when people defeat cancer, they can come in there comfortably with their families and have their families watch them ring their bell, and their families don't got to pick off of work or do all these extravagant things to try to make it to a hospital to watch them ring the little bells at the hospital.
And for those who may not be aware, let me just explain that. When patients undergo cancer treatment at a hospital, at the end of their chemo treatment, there's the ringing of the bell ceremony. So there's a bell there, and once you finish, you successfully completed the chemo, you ring that bell, and usually a lot of times you have family members there, and et cetera. So for those who may not know, I just wanted to explain a ritual of the ringing of the bell, and it's really a beautiful thing. So people who are there, people who are listening, and they're interested, and they're like, wow, that's a beautiful thing. Look, you're doing this. You don't charge anyone, but you need help. You need support, being a help and support to other people. So how can people help and support you?
Well, no, and I thank you for that. I know a wise man once told me there's no nation like a donation. So we love donations. And if anybody would like to donate, they can go through our PayPal and donate at paypal.com/Team Overtime, or they can cash app us at $TOTCW. And trust me, those donations goes a long way. Those donations go towards those programs being free inside of the center. So we love donations. We appreciate donations. Yeah, every time we attend a chemo, we take women flowers, we take the kids toys, we take the men something of their liking. So those were those donations go. They go right to the people that we help and support.
Now, Brother Harris, I just heard there's somebody out there who didn't listen to my advice, and so they didn't grab their pen, something to write with and something to write on, and so they're like, oh, I missed it. So for that person or persons out there, I'm talking to you. Could you just repeat that, how people can contact you again, and also give us the location of the Cancer Who Center?
Yes, no problem. You can donate at paypal.com/Team Overtime. You can donate on Cash App at $TOTCW, or you actually could go to our website at cancerwhocares.org, and it's a plethora of ways to donate on our website. And also, you can our address to the Cancer Who Care Center is 3400 Richmond Street. It's located in Port Richmond, Philadelphia. We're normally open Monday through Friday, We're trying to open back in February and resume our activities. We've been closed down because of COVID. And dealing with people with cancer, we're extra careful. So in February we will be resuming these programs. But yeah, just go to cancerfoodcares.org and go there. You'll receive all the information you need, and also anyway on how you can support.
Great. Well, we are out of time, but Brother Harris, again, thank you and your lovely wife for the work that you do and all of the people that you serve. Thank you, Word listeners, for listening. But before you go, I got one more piece of information. Look, I want for those of you who have stories and et cetera, and you want to be heard, you want to be seen, contact me at 267-683-4336. That's 267-683-4336. Brother Shamari, thank you. I told you something good.
Thank you, Brother Nathaniel Lee. And also, Brother Nathaniel Lee, real quick, is there an email address people can reach out to you at if they want to share some good news?
It really is. You can get my personal email address, and of course, I'm on all forms of social media: Facebook, Instagram, etc. Just put my name in the search box, Nathaniel Lee. But my email is Nate Lee, my name, NATELEE 1008. That's 1008 at live.com. That's Nate Lee 1008 at live.com. Hit me up. I will be glad to contact you. Give me a second, and I'll make sure that I get in contact with everyone who writes.
All right, y'all, let's share that good news. We need it because a lot of times we can succumb to our fear, our insecurity, and then our anxiety. So we got to know that there are people in the midst of it all that are doing great, powerful, strength-based, and productive things in our community right now. So you can too. Coming up on a commercial break, when we come back, no more 0%. We had a conversation with Mom Miguel and Barbara Horace Clouton. I'm also going to play a song, one of my favorite songs, Yes, Mistress, It's a Pity, from the stage play and then movie Sarafina, to remind us about why our struggle for education is an important duty and an important place that we must have victory. No more 0% when we return right after these messages.
Have you heard about City Council's plan to build more affordable housing, repair existing homes, create jobs, and support small business? The Neighborhood Preservation Initiative will invest $400 million in Philly communities. Read about it at www.phlcouncil.com/NPI.
Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk Media.
Need a new mattress? Stop by to see Julian, the mattress man, located at 7421 Stenton Avenue. You deal directly with the owner, Julian, to ensure the best prices on name brand mattresses like Sealy, Posturepedic. Call 215-424-5550. That's 215-424-5550.
Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Groundings with Brother Shamari. Right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
Welcome back to Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari, Word Radio, WordRadio.com. A few years back, I was traveling in the country doing a workshop that essentially talked about South Africa and America as twin kissing cousins. And that in many ways we need to pay attention here in America because we're getting a digitized, technocratic version of the South African apartheid system that's happening right in front of our eyes. Everything from the educational division, everything from the passbook laws that you needed to go from one township to another. A lot of that's going to happen in the name of DigiPass and digital certifications. And, you come into the certain place to work, but then you had to go back to your township. This idea of these smart cities like Sun City, Johannesburg, you have these metropolis that are seen as gleaming and smart, surrounded by these very desolate kind of districts or hinterlands. And so, I just want to play a song from a movie that I saw. Actually, I saw the stage play. I didn't really like the movie as much, no offense, but the stage play, Sarafina, reminds you of what Sarafina and children of South Africa had to go through in order to get an education. They had to navigate on the ground military, militia, and police who were dedicated to upholding apartheid. be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. I think our children are about to understand what it means to have to go to and fro. Our people are about to understand what it means to have to go to and fro in that context. Where you have to show a pass, that you got a certificate, that you got a vaccination, or that you have this kind of credential, or that you're this, whatever the strictures and restrictions are, you're going to have these passes, these chips, this identifications, digital identifications to kind of show you who you are, what your social credit score is. Well, I'm telling you, 1950s apartheid South Africa, without the technology. Now they have the technology to bring back that idea of social apartheid. And that idea of social apartheid in South Africa was actually replicated from the American idea of social apartheid. And unless we raise up and resist correctly, we're actually going to revisit that reality. But with the technology, surveillance, and monitoring system, and a militia dedicated to the maintenance of that order. Pay attention. Let's listen to Sarafina, because they already told us what we need to know. No more 0% for our children. We have to resurrect and begin to re-educate our children for the purpose of resistance and the purpose of reclaiming our Black sovereignty and African power. Sarafina. Yes, mistress, it's a pity.
Sonny. She came back to Longa. She came back with more commitment. She came back with stronger than ever.
And welcome back, y'all. I'm going to dig a little deeper into that as we close out our show today. It's actually has a moment of celebration before a very tragic moment. I want us to begin to understand education is a battleground. Our children are being systematically untaught how to be relevant, let alone powerful, in the world that's emerging in front of them. They're not in school. They're behind computers learning nothing. While everybody who is designing and positioning for power are learning the ins and outs of a new digital technological science-based world, we need to really take the fight for our children's education a lot more seriously than we are taking it right now, whether they're in Zoom class or in real class. Neither version of that is working for the benefit, for the power, for the future of Black children. And Black adults and Black leaders have been virtually silent on this massacre. It's time for us to stand up. It's time for us to get up. And most importantly, it's time for us to win in our fight against 0%. No more 0%. Mama Gail, Baba Harris, greetings, good afternoon, and welcome.
Peace and love. Greetings.
How are you? Greetings. So you know how we do it. So introduce yourselves to our listening audience and let's jump right in.
Okay, I'm Baba Harris, and I'd like to start off this time with, for those people out there who want to start their own schools, there's a nice school for sale at 62nd and Grays Avenue. You know, I used to be a relief engineer for the school district of Philadelphia. So I had the privilege of being in maybe at least 100 buildings. And I was actually in this building I'm talking about right now. It's a small 2-story building, probably 8 classrooms, and it's low maintenance, and it's up for sale. So the address is 62nd and Grays Avenue. If you're looking for a site, that's a nice starter site. The other thing I want to move to is this. Now you have the superintendent trying to recruit for our pre-K. You know, it's one thing he has our K to 3. Now he's putting out a call for our pre-K. You know, I don't know if this is the right statement or a wrong statement, but I heard that, you know, you're not mandated to send your child to school until the 1st grade. So for those parents out there that has reservations about pre-K and K and maybe think they have to enroll their children, please look into that, because I think by law you don't have to do it until they're in the 1st grade. Now, you know, I listen to WURD, and I listen to when people bring up the topic of education. And what's good is this. You know, you can tell when somebody is trying to defend a failing system. And, you know, I think we all can agree the system is failing, but yet we just leave it like that. So when we bring up points about why it's failing, then you have people trying to defend it. So here's one thing I like to talk about. You know, they always talk about a funding formula. And, you know, the price that the Philadelphia School District gets per child, I'm not sure. At one time it was between $13,000 to $13,500. So what people would compare is that amount of money to other districts, and, you know, they throw out a price like, well, other districts are getting $19,000 per child. But we have to, you know, this is what they say. So, but we have to look at what's actually going on in Philadelphia. You know, whether it's $13,000 per child or $19,000 per child, the teacher's budget and salary is $1.2 billion of the $3 billion that the school district has to work with. So, you know, with no accountability. So when they talk about funding formula, I think the teachers are getting enough money right there that they should be able to do something with that. You know, so that's one thing you can hear. That's one terminology that somebody might use to defend a failing school system funding formula. The other thing they might use.
Harris, before you move to your next point, I have a question. You raised a very important point that I really want you to clarify, if you can. Who is accountable right now? Last year, when they posted stuff under student achievement, you pointed out that they said COVID. You know, they just put COVID up there. They're probably going to do the same thing this year, and so you've lost almost 2 years of any academic progress to the extent that there could be any. And like, who do you hold accountable for the fact that our children are being de-educated over the last 2 years? Where does accountability lie at this point?
Well, you know, it always starts with the superintendent, and then who he designates. And the person that always would show up at your school board meetings would be the person in charge of academics. So you would have a person in charge of academics that would give a presentation to the Board of Education, and the Board of Education would listen, and then 9 times out of 10 would agree with whatever is being presented to them. So I guess who we can hold accountable would be, at this point, the Board of Education, because they do have governance over the superintendent.
Is this a point for real? And I would love to hear you and Mama Gail weigh in on this. Y'all might beat me up a little bit. But is this a point when really Black people in the Black community and Black leaders need to look in the mirror and say, we also need to hold ourselves accountable for allowing them to destroy our children? And we know better because we've been talking about it for several months. People know that this is happening because they're starting to talk about it on other radio shows now. And yet we have not organized ourselves to stand against what we know is the intentional diseducation, miseducation, de-education of Black children. When do we start holding ourselves accountable for being punks about this issue?
I think that, and greetings, I have to jump in on that one. I think, and I've said it, you know, I've seen in our community, I use the word, I believe God don't make punks, to be honest with you. And I said that. And I said, I've never seen so many cowards in my life, but this is the other side of it. Because as a parent involvement consultant, that used to be my business. I stopped working 8 years ago. I had my last contract was with the district, and I did well when I worked because most of the stuff I did for free. But what I believe, and I'm serious when I say this to you, that there are so many people in our community that want to try to make money off getting involved, that it's unreal. And they don't go in to fix it many times. They go in to get paid. I'm the kind of person that they told Dr. Height, they told Dr. Ackerman, Mama Gail will take I'm saying this is what I was told. Mama Gail will take a contract, but she will not stop talking. And when I had my last contract, they called me and said, Mama Gail, it's over. Your dates are over. And I kept working because that's how committed I am. Just as I was doing it before. I'm saying to you, holding ourselves accountable is something that we're going to have to do one way or another. At the same time, those that are trying to, let me give you an example. Even for the prayer, I asked people in the community to come out to do the prayer. I got a call, I got a message from someone, and I spoke to her. And she said, Mama Gail, I don't think she was considering coming. I don't think I can come because we're trying to get a contract. Did you hear me?
I heard you.
We're trying to get a contract. So I have never stopped. My integrity will never change because of a dollar. That's what I think about our community. Yes, we better hold each other accountable, but at the same time, when people are just trying to make money, and once they get a contract, they don't believe they have the right to say anything because they want to keep getting paid. That's the biggest problem that I see. And I'm telling you, I used to have meetings at 440 to bring people from our community in to get contracts. I used to work with procurement to make sure our people had the opportunity to get what they're supposed to get. And I can tell you something. I'm dealing with contracts right now in my head. Because if we did a study, I can tell you I truly believe our community is owed so much because they did not get the percentage that was supposed to be gotten by the school district, as well as when it comes to the children, everybody at the top needs to be held accountable for the failure of our children. Not the children failing, but the adults failing our children. So go ahead with the next question.
It's only hush money if you hush once you get the money. And, you know, a lot of us are hushing after we got money. And so that makes us complicit in this demise that we're talking about. But sorry for cutting you off. I want to come back to you, Baba Horace.
Yeah, and, you know, here, this is why I bring up things that defend a failing school system. You know, when the politicians or a prominent person from the community is asked to speak about education, they bring up funding formula. You know, that's defending a failing system. The other thing, the other key word is equity. We need equity. Well, here's an example. But we have equity. If a teacher is making between $42,000 and $78,000 and up in Central High School, which is 95%, they're making between $42,000 and $78,000 on up in Bartram, which is a 0% high school. So you have equity. Equity starts and stops with your teachers. You know, and see, that's the thing. Nobody really wants to get on these teachers and get on these administrators, these principals. You know, these schools, 98, I would say be fair with the books and the stats, 90% of these schools, the principals are saying that these teachers are between 90 and 100% proficient in the classroom. So here there's two bodies, you know, the teachers and the principals. This is why this failing is allowed to continue. You know, and the third thing is this: even when you have shows that are showcasing success. You know, they had a show showcasing dual, what they say, like dual majors or something, where the child can take up 2 years of college while they're in high school. You know, and the lady asked them how many students does it apply to. One said 80, one said 200. Well, just think, you have Central, you know, that's operating at 2,200 children. How many of those 80 to 200 children are coming out of Central or even coming out of Masterman? You know, I mean, it's
ridiculous.
It's fine to showcase this stuff, but the bottom line is, when you talk about success and graduation, how many children are actually graduating, period? You know, we never get that number. You know, so that's the thing. You have funding formula, which defends a failing school system. You have equity, which defends a failing school system, and you have showcases here and there. You know, last week, the superintendent brought in somebody that was showcasing music coming out of Strawberry Mansion. Like, the people put together a sound studio. And what's funny is, I had the pleasure of meeting the guy at Strawberry Mansion, and I said to him one day, this was while we were still in person, I said, did you know that School of the Future has a $1 million light and soundboard over there in the auditorium? You know, for people that know about sound systems and light systems, they have $1 million light and sound systems in these brand new high schools. You know, and then they even had the Light and Sound Union of Philadelphia come to School of the Future, and it was using it, you know, as training. So when you showcase and highlight things like that, how many students are really privy to a serious after-school program that can get them in a union? And you have, you know, maybe 4 or 5 high schools that has this type of technology. We're talking back since 2009 that they had this stuff. You know?
So one of the things that's interesting to me is we're all in an uproar, and everybody's on radio shows about the difference in how, you know, the white protesters that stormed the Capitol were treated and how different it would be if they were black. And I'm like, well, your children go to school every day, and you see the difference in how white students get educated and how they get educated every day. And ain't nobody crying the blues about that. Ain't nobody in an uproar about every day your children go to school and you witness a stark difference in how white children are educated and how black children are educated right here in the city of Philadelphia. And ain't nobody mad about that, but we mad about the Capitol building.
Well, that's true too. That's the flavor of the month right now, as they would say. You know, but when it comes up about education, here again, people are being politically correct, and as my wife stated, trying to make money. You know, this is a $3 billion pie here. Right. You know, so that's you know, everybody would love to call up the superintendent. I think someone called up the superintendent from City Hall the other day on one of the shows and said, hey, I talked to Dr. Height, and he looked at the program I was trying to present. He said, oh, yeah, we can do that in your K-12. And, you know, so I said to the young man, well, you know, the most important thing you can do right now is probably try to help these seniors get driver's license. You know, and maybe he didn't hear me or went over his head or he didn't want to entertain it because I didn't get any response about that. You know, something children can actually use right now. You know, right now they had right now what's going on is what they call site selection. Here again, the students, the parents are trying to find the next level of their child's education. And
you're gonna be sitting right home in your living room. That's your site selection.
You're correct about that. And you know what's funny is they're going on the statistics of the last in-person school year. So we're talking 2018, 2019. That's what when a child submits their, I guess you would call resume, that's what they have to submit from 2018 to 2019. So it's like this current year is just it's a wash. COVID-19 year.
Yeah. So when we come up on the commercial break, when we come back, I want you all, as we always do, make a call to action to the people. See, because when the people are ready, we'll be ready. I mean, they're individuals right now. who are ready and been doing this for a long time. You hear them on this show every day. Mama Gail, Baba Harvest, and there are others individually and even in small groups who are pushing and holding and grinding and making things happen. But I'm saying to you all, Black Philadelphia, that until this becomes a Black Philadelphia issue, until we say no more 0%, no more sacrificing of our children to educational miseducation, de-education, and educational, what I call educational genocide, that's what's going to have to happen. So join in. Hit us up. Here are your questions, your comments, your affirmations, and your protestations. 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. I'm telling y'all, when 10 years, 20 years from now, our children will not look back kindly on the future that we as the adults of now have delivered them. It is our duty to get up, stand up, and do better. We will talk with you after these messages.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting WURDradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his own words. Brought to you by Pico, Keystone Plus, Premium Nutrition Meals, and JD's Auto Body and Painting. The immortal words of Dr. King.
What I'm saying to you this morning, my friend, even if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, go on out and sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Handel and Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. If you can't be a pine on the top of a hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub on the side of the reel. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. And when you do this, you've mastered the length of life.
Brought to you by Pico, powering communities, Keystone Plus, Premium Nutrition Meals, and JD's Auto Body and Painting for all your auto body and detailing needs. Groundings with Brother Shamari right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
And welcome back to Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari. If you want to join our conversation, now would be your time. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Time for us to get up, stand up, step up, be up. Go up, whatever you need, whatever your pep-do promotional chant needs to be. It's time to step into it, y'all. I mean, time is ticking. The school district is educationally slaughtering our children, crippling them mentally, and I dare say physically, emotionally, taking the sense of their, what we call the psychology efficacy, the belief in themselves in order to do something. That's why you see despair on our streets, because they know, they already know when they look into the future and they look to their left and their right and they see who they're competing against, those students who actually get an education, those students whose parents and communities actually give a darn about them and are willing to fight for them. They know what that looks like because they see it happening for other people. They don't really see it happening yet for them by us. See, like how I did that. Not for us by us, but for them by us, because that's how it has to be. Our children should be able to rely on us to fight for them. We got to stop giving them the weight of the struggles, the fights, and the victories we need to deliver to them on their behalf. No more 0%. Mama Gail, Baba Harvest, back to you.
Hey, thank you. You know, my wife talked about people trying to make money off our children. But I just like to read a list of partnerships. Now, this is for Bartram High School, which used to be well, not used to be, but it is a 1,706 seat facility or building. Now they only house 683 children. But as partners, they have Bartram Gardens, College Access, ELECT, Greater Philadelphia Urban Affairs, Harcum College Upward Bound, Horizon House, Jewish Family Services, Men of Bartram, Women of Bartram, John Bartram High School Alumni Association, Philadelphia DA's Office, PHMC, CEMAAC, The Village, and Urban Nutrition. Now, this school is at 0%. Where's all the
so instead of partners, they should be co-conspirators. They should be called co-conspirators, huh?
Mm-hmm. Now, yes, and their history of student achievement is this, dating back in 2015-16. You know, we're talking 4% in student achievement, 0% in student achievement, 0% in student achievement, 0% in student achievement, and now COVID-19. You know, these are schools. I think they had a. You know, these are schools. These are your neighborhood schools. These are the schools that the children and the parents have to select from. You know, when you go on a selection site and key in these schools, and it's funny how these schools have points of pride, and then when you get to their actual achievement level, they have intervened. You know, these schools are slated for takeover. You know, so it's just sad that, you know, this is what we have to choose. And, you know, here again, the superintendent's been here 9 years, but people want to defend him by saying it's not enough money. People want to defend him by saying we need equity. You know, people want to defend him by showcasing probably your best students out of Central and Masterman, you know, and then of course we have our talented children, you know, our sports children, our entertaining, our next level of children that will, you know, that have a path. But the majority, when we talk about the 0%, no more 0%, that affects 14,000 children in these schools, in these 24 high schools. You know, half your high school population here out of the 50 schools. So, you know, public, I don't know what else more to say. We're here again, we're just trying to catch you up with something that's been going on for years. And now the district is, you know, cut back on your access to board meetings down from 3 to 1. So the next meeting is on the 28th. Please get online and listen, and just listen to what's going on, because it's going to be 9 people. Here again in Philadelphia, 8 women and 1 man, people of color. You know, since everybody talks about color and people of color, you're going to have a board of people of color and 1 man. So females, you have your representation on this board. So please, you get to look and listen and see who's helping the superintendent make the decisions for the students in Philadelphia.
Who the co-conspirators are. Before I let you go, Baba Harris, and shift to Mama Gail, what I want to know from you 2 things. Where, because I don't want to assume, and unfortunately I know better than to assume. Tell people where they can go to get the same data and same information you're reading from, and then let people know exactly on the 28th how to tune into and participate in the upcoming school board meeting.
Well, the information is from the school district's website, Philadelphia School District website, philadelphia.org. Philadelphia School District.org. And yeah, and the other thing was about the meeting. You can go on the school district website also on the 28th, and at the top it'll have a link that you can click on, and then you'll be directed right to the actual meeting. So it's as simple as that. You know, the data comes out of the school district website. You know, it's in plain sight. You just have to know how to navigate through it, because if you put in and go to the school district website and put in what schools have 0% achievement, you won't get it. You know, I went through 1,200 pages of this to come up with the data that we came up with specifically. So
for your record, it's right there at the school district website, y'all. There's a saying called hiding in plain sight. And that's definitely what they're doing. They're hiding the educational slaughter of our children right in plain sight. That's why your teachers can get high ratings on proficiency and your students get 0%, because the teachers are they're being rewarded. They're proficient in the uneducation, de-education, and miseducation of our Black students. So they're telling you in plain sight, yeah, as long as we continue this up, this district gets $3 billion a year. These teachers get rewarded. These teachers get recognized as teachers of the year, both locally and nationally, while our students learn virtually absolutely nothing. And as long as we're content and complicit and comfortable with that, then we have to also hold ourselves accountable to that as well. Mom Miguel, your thoughts. How can people listening to you and us weigh in?
My number is 267-379-6184. 267-379-6184. You talked about a call to action, I believe, earlier. One of the things that I'm starting, I've always been an advocate, but I've always been proactive in the schools anyway. What I do has always been at the same time. I've been involved on different levels, as well as going to school board meetings, speaking up for folks. So I'm looking for people that are ready to stand up for these children. But the first thing that I'm doing right now is, and for anybody, any adult that wants help, call me. But I'm reaching out to create a youth ambassadors corps of young people from across the city representing their schools. They have the answers. They know what's going on. They know what's happening, and they can tell you. I want to say for the people listening, what you can do is start talking to your relatives. Most of us have people that we're related to who have children in the schools, even if ours are grown and what have you, moved away. You have people who you know who have children. Talk to them and see what's going on. Give them my number. I've been speaking up for parents all along. Call city council. Call Darrell Clark's office and say, we want the school district to be held accountable for the failure of the children in the district. Demand accountability. That's what you can do. You are taxpayers. You are citizens that are holding the city up. Step up, speak up, and get involved. You don't even have to leave your house to do it.
Right. So I got a couple callers who want to weigh in. Let's go to Monique in West Oak Lane. Greetings, Monique.
Greetings, Mama Gail, Paris. How are you today?
Great.
So the reason why I called in is I wanted to make a comment. I have 4 children. I have a 30-year-old, a 26-year-old, and I have a set of 11-year-old twin boys that have autism. So with that being said, I had to figure out how to restructure myself around the school district system, from having children who were, quote, unquote, considered regular students to having special needs children, specifically Black boys that have special needs. And with that being said, without having any involvement from DHS or anything like that, I began my journey with my son. And within that journey, what I found is 2 things. This system only sees our children as dollars and cents. They're not trying to educate them. They're not going to be empathetic or sympathetic to the needs of the parents or to the children, regardless of how many statutes or statistics that you go through. they do not care. My second point is, with us knowing all of that, and the statistics and the numbers, current politicians, on and on and on, what are we going to do? We have our communities. We have grandmothers. We have scientists. We have doctors. We have mathematicians. We have lawyers right in our community. So with that being said, we have everything that we need. We just need the movement. We need the action. The individuals who have the finances, if you want to give back and you're concerned about a tax break or a 501c, I'm quite sure that there are accountants in the neighborhoods, in the communities that can guide you on how you can donate your funds to purchase this building. I'm sorry, where did you say, Brother Harris, over on Graves Avenue?
Yeah. 67 and Graves Avenue.
Right, that's where you start. You understand what I'm saying? And then we've got a whole lot of empty lots, abandoned buildings, okay, community centers that are left abandoned because they don't have anyone to staff them.
Sister Monique, I want to thank you for your call. I want to get one more caller in before commercial break, but definitely, I mean, let's make this real simple, people. We can't do. She said we got it all in our community. We got it all in our hands. And guess what? We can't do any worse than 0%. You can't. It's impossible. There is no negative 10%. It's 0% is the bottom. So it amazes me that we don't even believe enough in ourselves to say, you know what? We got this from here because we can't do no worse than y'all. Matter of fact, I know we're going to do better than y'all because we actually love our black children. So we got this. Y'all move out the way. Let's go to Brother Westset, Southwest Philadelphia.
Greetings. Greetings. Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Come on, Brother Westset. We got about 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. Just very quickly, I just wanted to say that I appreciate Mama Gail and her husband for the information that they provide, because one of the things that they have done is that they have literally lifted the veil. You know, before there was all this public relations information, you allowed the superintendent to come on for an hour. Nobody can ask them questions. But Mama Gail and her husband have literally come with the receipt, so that literally they have been exposed and you see everything. So that's the only thing that I want. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention very quickly is the importance of addressing this issue with Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday or Earth Day, and allowing it to be a day of service where we're going in and painting things. To me, that does not do anything to basically pay tribute to his legacy. You know, I think it actually does the exact opposite. So I want to put that out there since you played that audio.
Well, and it's funny, Brother Westset, because on that note, if you actually type in Martin Luther King birthday, actually January 18th is the first thing you're going to see. It's going to come up because that's the date of this quote-unquote day of service today. And they literally now have his birthday equated with whatever day the day of service is. Like when you give over that much power to the people who are telling your story, and you know they don't have your best interests at heart, you're in for a life of servitude. And I'm saying we're doing the same thing with the education of our children. We've literally handed that process over to people who don't have their best interests at heart, and they're being transformed and reformed and deformed in the process. And that's why it's way past time for us to stand on no more 0%. So Mama Gail, Baba Harris, how do people reach out again if they want to join the movement, the crusade, the mission, whatever people want to call it?
Call me 267-379-6184, 267-379-6184.
Again, you heard her. It's on us. I mean, at the end of the day, it's time for us to stand up, get up, wake up, rise up, whatever words you want to use, up needs to be a part of it, because we're sitting on our hands and we're watching people sacrifice our children. We're watching our children look at us and say, how come everybody else's mamas and fathers and grandmothers and leaders and elders and politicians and city council people, how come everybody else's can fight for them? And yet our black people don't seem to know how to do anything about what we know is the continual educational demise and slaughter of black children. So Mama Miguel, Baba Harris, thank you as always for No More 0% right here on Groundings, Evolutions, and Elevations. When we come back, final segment of Groundings with Brother Shamari. We'll talk with you after these messages.
I would like to play a little tune I just composed not so long ago.
Hey family, do you like hearing the best jazz selections aired by 3 of the best jazz announcers in Philadelphia? Well, tune in to 96.1 FM,
96.1 FM,
and 900 AM, WURD Radio, independent black media for Freedom Sounds of Jazz.
Freedom Sounds of Jazz.
Hear Freedom Sounds of Jazz 10 p.m. Fridays with your hosts in rotation, Aquila, Jonathan Bay, and David Fritz. That's 10 p.m. Friday nights on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM, independent black media.
Hey, WURD family. Our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details.
Groundings with Brother Shamari right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to the final segment. This time flew today of Groundings, Evolutions, Elevations with Brother Shamari right here. WURD Radio, WURDradio.com. I want to let you all know what we're going to focus on Sundays. Storytelling, y'all. You know, I'm fascinated by how we've let them literally take the story of Martin Luther King. Actually, when we say happy birthday today, January 15th, we need to be saying happy birthday to Michael King. He was born Michael King. Go do your research about where the shift, actually he was born Michael King Jr. Let me get the story right. Go do your research about where the shift to Martin Luther King Jr. came from. So that means father also had to change his name from Michael to Martin Luther, right? And why? What's that about? Why is that? So now we honor Martin Luther King Jr. He was born on January 15th, and yet we seem like we're relegated to his birthday being on the third Monday of every January. See what happens when they rewrite your story? They get to rewrite your legacy. They get to rewrite your purpose. They get to rewrite everything. We let them do it with Malcolm X. You know, I really want to see this weekend One Night in Miami, because I really want to see what they do with the legacy of Malcolm X and Sam Cooke and Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali. You know, I don't even think many of us knew that there was that kind of meeting that happened, but I'm a big Sam Cooke, Malcolm X guy. So I was aware of it, and I hope I appreciate Virginia King for telling this story. Don't put none of that Hollywood mess up in there. Tell the story, tell it right. Make sure my brothers maintain their dignity in the storytelling. We got to fight. You know, we got to get the story of Whipped Peter, Slave Gordon. You know, that's the dude you always see with all the whip marks on his back. You know, he couldn't speak for himself. When he went to the abolition movement meetings and the Quaker meetings, the white folks had to speak for him and tell their story about what those whips on his back meant. He wasn't allowed to speak for himself at their meetings. We're in a moment like that right now if we're not careful, because in our sense of evading and running from the fear and the insecurity and the anxiety of this moment that we're in, you know, brought to you by COVID, brought to you by criminality, brought to you by storming the Capitol. Be careful that when you seek solace, when you seek strength, when you seek safety, when you seek security, you're also not seeking that from your enemy. You can't let your enemy have both sides of the polarity. Y'all heard that word earlier. And that, so when you seek solace through food, solace through drugs, solace through entertainment and the media, when you seek solace through the strategies that they've already designed for you, so they got you on the plantation and off. They got you fear, insecurity, and anxiety, and they have you seeking solace, strength, safety, and security from the apparatuses that they've designed for you. I don't know. That don't seem like life to me. That don't seem like Black liberation, independence, freedom, or empowerment. Let's get our story back. It's the first thing in the quest for dignity and definition. We have to be the definers, the storytellers for our own reality. And in that sense, I close the day. Sadafina, yes, mistress, it's a pity. Because if we're not careful, we're going to revert back to a technological apartheid South Africa, right here in these United States of America. Balls in our court, based on how we've stepped up, gotten up, woken up, stood up on behalf of Black children. It takes a lot for me to keep my hope alive, but guess what? My hope is still alive. Because I know that my people, when we see right, when we return home, when we commit to our purpose, pretty undefeated. They only get us when we're delusional. And right now it's time to pull the covers back and stop being delusional so we can stand up on behalf of our children's future. Talk to you on Sunday. Peace.
For 2 months, Sarafina was detained by the secret branch of police. We didn't think